Well, let me begin by apologizing for being late. We got started late today and we never caught up. But this is a fantastic turnout. Sheboygan, thank you so much. And let me thank Anita Klein, Jim Meyer, Mary Donahue, Mary Fadesh, James Steinbrooker, Cal Potter, and all of you for coming out here this afternoon. All right. Well, you know what? I love you too. And it looks to me, as I look around, that Sheboygan is ready for a political revolution. That you agree that it is time to not only elect a new president, but to transform our country. There is a lot to go over. Let me just begin by telling you what you already know. When we began this campaign 11 months ago, our campaign was considered to be a fringe campaign. Well, a lot has changed in 11 months. We have won 6 out of the last 7 caucuses and primaries. And with your help, and if there is a large voter turnout on Tuesday, we're going to win here in Wisconsin. It is amazing to me, as I've traveled throughout your beautiful state and throughout this country, how many people understand that it is just too late for establishment politics and establishment economics. We have got to go forward and transform this country in a very bold way. When we began this campaign, we were 3% in the polls, 3%. We were about 65 points behind Secretary Clinton. I think it is fair to say we have made up some ground in the interval. A national poll had us a point ahead last week. But more importantly, I think as Democrats all over this country deal with the incredible likelihood that a Donald Trump will become the Republican candidate, my sentiments exactly. And what Democrats all over this country understand, that it would be a disaster for this country if a Donald Trump ended up in the White House. And what more and more people, I think, are understanding is that our campaign would be by far the strongest campaign against Donald Trump. And this is true not only nationally. I think in the last CNN poll, we beat Trump by 20 points. And that's before we really began to expose what a nutcase he really is. You know, one of the problems you have dealing with Trump, it really is hard to keep up with him. You know, every day there is some other outrageous, absurd statement, and I've chosen not to spend my entire campaign responding to every one of his absurd statements, because that's all we would, have time to do. But it is not only national polls which have us defeating Mr. Trump by a large number. A recent Marquette University poll right here in Wisconsin had Secretary Clinton beating Trump by 10 points. That's not bad. We were beating him here in Wisconsin by 19 points. Now, our campaign is doing as well as it is because we're doing something quite unusual in modern American politics. We're telling the truth. And what the truth is about, if we are going to go forward. So we are trying to treat the American people as intelligent human beings who are prepared to look at hard truths, understand them, and then work together to make fundamental changes in our crises. I mean, I could give you a speech and tell you everything is going great and, have some music and tell you some jokes, but that is, other than the fact I have a terrible sense of humor, that wouldn't work too well. But we're trying to deal with the real issues that the American people are thinking about. And let me give you a few examples of that. Number one, I am the former chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, and in that capacity, in that capacity, not only have I tried to do everything that I can to protect the health care and the benefits that our men and women who put their lives on the line to defend us are entitled to, but I've also had the real honor and privilege of meeting veterans going back to World War II. I just met a gentleman last week, 99 years old, I think, fought in World War II. And when, sir, could you stand up? We owe that gentleman and millions more than can ever be repaid. They are the ones who beat Hitler, and they beat Japanese imperialism, and they are the people who saved our country. Thank you very much. But when we recognize what a debt of gratitude, a debt that we can never repay, to our veterans, we recognize that their fight was the fight to defend American democracy. And democracy, it's a pretty radical idea. It's a pretty new idea in world history. And what it says is that our country, any country, should not be ruled by a king or a queen or a czar, but that in fact the people themselves, ordinary people without a lot of money, ordinary people have a right to determine the future of this nation. That is a radical idea. And what I worry about very much is that in recent years, as a result of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, our campaign finance system has become corrupt and is undermining American democracy. Democracy is not a radical idea. What it is is one person, one vote. You got a vote, and you have a vote, and you have a vote. And you want to vote for me? Great. You want to vote against me? That's fine. That's called democracy, and I believe in that. I really do. I believe in the clash of ideas. I love the idea that the people who disagree with us, fine, learn from them, debate the ideas. That is an extraordinary system. But what democracy is not about is billionaires buying elections. That it is not. And I worry very much that in this campaign cycle alone, the Koch brothers, the second wealthiest family in America, you know the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers and a few other billionaires will be spending an estimated $900 million in order to support candidates who will represent the wealthy and the powerful. That is not democracy. That is oligarchy, and we will not accept it. But that is not the only attack against democracy that we are seeing. Right now, in Republican governments all over our country, there is a significant effort to suppress the vote. Now, as a nation, we have one of the lowest voter turnout rates of any major country on earth. Our job is to bring more people into the political process, expand democracy, make it easier for people to vote. You know, in Vermont, I have run for office many times. I've lost some, I've won more, but it has never occurred to me, never, not for 1 second, nor do I think it has occurred to most candidates or elected officials, to figure out a way that I can make it harder for people to vote because they might be voting against me. I run on my ideas, and if my ideas can convince people, I will win. So the idea that in your state, under Governor Walker, we are seeing massive efforts to make it harder for people to vote is absolutely wrong and unacceptable. It is un-American, that's right. What American democracy is about is saying to people, let's have a debate on the issues. I want as many people as possible to participate, and the best ideas win, not working overtime to make it harder for poor people or old people or students to participate in the political process. That is wrong. That is wrong, and that is, in fact, un-American, going in exactly the wrong direction of what our country is supposed to be about. So I say to Scott Walker, and I say to other governors throughout this country, if you are afraid of free and fair and open elections, get out of politics, get another job. And while I am on the subject of your governor, I think it would be a fair perspective to say that I will be very much the opposite as President of the United States of what Governor Walker is as governor. Governor Walker has led the effort in this country to attack the trade union movement. I believe we have to expand the trade union movement. I believe that a strong and growing trade union movement not only effectively protects its own members, but driving up wages will drive up wages for all Americans. Governor Walker has provided huge tax breaks for corporations while making the largest cuts to education in Wisconsin history. I think he has got it backwards. I think we've got to increase funding for education and demand that profitable corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. Governor Walker, I'm a member of the committee that helped write the Affordable Care Act, and the Affordable Care Act has done a lot of very good things. It was, honestly, I do not recall having gone to many meetings as we wrote that bill that anyone thought that a governor would reject the expansion of Medicaid. And that has happened with Republican governors all over this country. So Governor Walker and I have a slightly different view on health care. I believe that health care is a right of all people. And it is really hard for me to imagine how, for ideological reasons, he could prevent 120,000 people in this state from getting health insurance through Medicaid that they desperately need. I can't understand that. Now, this campaign has been talking about a corrupt campaign finance system, but it has also been talking about a rigged economy. What a rigged economy means is that today in this great country, the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. A rigged economy is when you have the 20 wealthiest people, 20 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million people. A rigged economy is when you have one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owning more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. And let me say a word about the Walton family and Walmart and what a rigged economy is about. Walmart today is the largest private sector employer in the country. But the wages that they pay to their employees is so low that many of those workers are forced to go on food stamps or Medicaid. Guess who pays for those food stamps and Medicaid? You do. Middle class does. So what a rigged economy is about So I say to the Walton family, wealthiest family in America, get off of welfare, pay your workers a living wage. When we talk about a living wage and when we talk about wage equity, it is not only demanding that Walmart pay its workers a living wage, it is that every American who works earns a living wage. Now, I know your governor does not agree, but I think that the $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage is a starvation wage and has got to be raised to a living wage. And that living wage is $15 an hour. And when we talk about the major problems facing this country, it's not just the corrupt campaign finance system, not just a rigged economy. And by the way, when we talk about a rigged economy, I want you all to ask yourselves, how does it happen that despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, we have millions of people in our country who are working longer hours for lower wages? How does it happen that in America today, millions of people are working 2 or 3 jobs just to cobble together the income and the health care their family needs? How does it happen that in America today, our people work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world? You guys know that? Japanese are very hard-working people. We work longer hours than the Japanese. We have mom out working, we got dad out working, we got the kids out working, and at the end of all of that, 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. That's a rigged economy. You ready for a radical idea? All right. Together, we are going to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Now, when we talk to the American people and when we listen to the American people, what we are hearing is women telling us that they are tired of earning 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. And that is why together we are going to fight for pay equity for women workers. This campaign is listening to senior citizens. And what senior citizens are telling me in Vermont and in Wisconsin, they cannot get by on $11,000 or $12,000 a year Social Security. Nobody can get by on $11,000 or $12,000 a year Social Security. Now, my Republican colleagues in the Senate, many of them want to cut Social Security benefits. I've got bad news for them. Not only are we not going to cut benefits, we are going to expand Social Security benefits. This campaign is listening to young people. And young people are telling me a couple of things. First of all, what they are worried about is that they may be the first generation in the modern history of America to have a lower standard of living than their parents. In other words, the American dream, which my family experienced, we didn't have a lot of money. My parents worked hard for my brother and I to do better than our parents. But right now, for many families, it is the American dream in reverse. And second of all, what young people are telling me is, how does it happen when our parents, our teachers, everybody said, go out and get the best education that you can. Go to college. It's important for you. It's important for the country. Why is it then that when they leave school, they are $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 in debt? And all over this country, I talk to young people who are struggling year after year after year to pay off that debt. They're paying 20% of their income paying off that debt. They can't buy a car, they can't buy a home, they can't get married, can't have kids because of that debt. To me, that is nonsensical. We live in a highly competitive global economy. We need the best educated workforce in the world. We should be rewarding and encouraging people to get an education, not punishing them. I want you to think about this for a moment. What this campaign is about is thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of the status quo, thinking outside of what media wants you to consider to be possible. So if you take a deep breath and you think about it, everybody agrees that education is vitally important to us as human beings. It's what we do. We learn every day. We encourage that. And second of all, that we need a well-educated workforce. 100 years ago, very brave people said, all kids in America will be able to receive a public education, free education from first grade to 12th grade. That is a huge breakthrough, an extraordinary step forward. But you know what? The world has changed in 100 years. The world has changed in 50 years. People today need more education than they did 50 years ago. In fact, you can argue that a college degree today in many ways is the equivalent of what a high school degree was 50 years ago. Is that right? 50 years ago, you had a high school degree, you were not in bad shape. You can go out and probably get yourself a pretty good job and make it into the middle class. Today, in most cases, that is not the reality. And that is why I believe, with a changing economy, changing technology, that when we look at public education, it's not good enough to talk about first grade through 12th grade. We have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And I want you to know why this is in fact a revolutionary idea, and it's more than the obvious. You know, young people, yeah, it means they're not going to leave school with debt. That's great. But I'll tell you what else it means. I grew up in a family, as many of you did not have a lot of money. My parents never went to college. You got millions of families all over this country. Parents never went to college. You got kids in low-income, working-class families who do not believe that they will ever be able to go to college. Not for them. I want every kid in Wisconsin, every kid in Vermont, regardless of his or her income, to know that if they study hard, they take school seriously, that yes, despite the income of their families, they will be able to get a college education. the way. And in addition to that, we have got to address the crisis of student debt, and we do that in my legislation by allowing people with student debt to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find. And by the way, I heard something very distressing a few days ago in Milwaukee. I heard, talking to some teachers, and this is really distressing, that given the attacks on education and the attacks on teachers in this state, that younger people are no longer particularly interested in becoming teachers. Is that true? I mean, that is, you stop and you think about it. What are we doing as a nation? We need our best and brightest to become educators, not to discourage them. So thinking outside of the box asked another question. Not only how crazy is it to not have the best schools in America, how crazy is it that when every psychologist who studies the issue understands that the most important years of human development are 0 through 4. Is that right? All right. If that is true, and if in the vast majority of families in America today, mom is working, dad is working, it is clear we need high quality, affordable child care pre-K. And we should not be paying people who work with the youngest Americans in child care, starvation, wages. We should be making sure they are well trained, well educated, and well paid. Now, when we talk about how we're going to fund higher education in America, how we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free, I have been criticized because this is a very expensive proposition. It's true. It costs about $70 billion a year to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and lower student debt. How are you going to pay for that? I will tell you how we're going to pay for that. Everybody here remembers 8 years ago when the greed and recklessness and illegal behavior on Wall Street drove this economy into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. What happened? Congress bailed them out. That was okay, not a problem. People, through illegal activity, destroy our economy. What else will we do? Of course, Congress says we'll bail them out. But somehow it is a radical idea when I say that now is the time to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. And that tax on Wall Street speculation will bring in more than enough money to lower student debt in this country and pay to make public colleges and universities tuition free. We bailed out Wall Street. Now it is Wall Street's time to help the middle class of this country. Let me say a word or two about some of the differences that exist between Secretary Clinton and myself. And there are a lot of differences, but I'll keep it short. Difference number one. This is an issue that's just been popping up in the last few days. And it's an important distinction. Everybody knows that Congress and our political system is dominated by big money. So it is very important to analyze and think about how candidates raise the money they need to run for public office. Now, I had to make a decision 11 months ago when we began this campaign as to whether or not I would do what every other campaign is doing, and that is establish a super PAC. Well, I agree with you. So we thought about it for a tenth of a second, and we determined that, we would be hypocrites. This campaign does not represent Wall Street or the drug companies or the fossil fuel industry or the billionaire class. So we are not going to ask them for money, and we are not going to have a super PAC. But then the question arose, that's a great thing, you're not going to have a super PAC, wonderful, terrific. How do you raise the money you need? So we did something very radical again. We asked the middle class and working families for help. And you know what happened? And this, in a million years, I never would have thought would be possible. As of today, we have received well over 6 million individual campaign contributions. That is more campaign contributions than any candidate in the history of our country at this point in an election. Anybody know the average campaign contribution? All right, $27. And what that means, to paraphrase Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I'm proud of that. Now, Secretary Clinton has chosen to take another path in terms of fundraising. She has several super PACs. The last super PAC reported raising $25 million in special interest, $15 million alone from Wall Street. As many of you may know, Secretary Clinton has given speeches on Wall Street for $225,000 a speech. Now, you know what I think? If you're going to give a speech for $225,000, it must be a really fantastic speech. If you're going to give a speech for $225,000, it must be a really fantastic speech, don't you think? I mean, why else would you get $225,000? Must be written in Shakespearean prose. Must be a speech that solves most, if not all, of the problems facing humanity. And that is why I think it would be a great idea for the Secretary to release that speech to the American people. But it's not only Wall Street. Yesterday, some of you may know, Secretary Clinton was met with by a environmental activist at a forum that she held. And the activist asked her if she would reject money from the fossil fuel industry, which I have. And the reason I have is that I happen to believe that climate change is one of the great crises facing our planet. But Secretary Clinton said in response to this young woman, she said she was sick, quote, sick of the Sanders campaign lying about, end of quote, contributions she received from the fossil fuel industry. Well, Secretary Clinton owes us an apology. We were not lying, we were telling the truth. The truth is that Secretary Clinton has relied heavily on funds from lobbyists working for the oil, gas, and coal industry. According to an analysis done by Greenpeace, Hillary Clinton's campaign and her super PAC have received more than $4.5 $4.5 million from the fossil fuel industry. In fact, 57 oil, gas, and coal industry lobbyists have directly contributed to her campaign, with 43 of them contributing the maximum allowed for the primary. And these are not just workers in the fossil fuel industry, these are paid, registered lobbyists. Secretary Clinton, you owe our campaign an apology. We were telling you the truth. But it is not only about how we raise money. That is enormously important. It is about foreign policy. All of you know the most important foreign policy debate in the modern history of this country took place in 2002. George Bush, President Bush, Vice President Cheney, all of the rest of the Bush administration told us why we had to go to war in Iraq. I listened very carefully to what they had to say. I did not believe them. I voted against the war in Iraq. Secretary Clinton was saying in the Senate, representing New York, she heard the same evidence that I heard. She voted for the war in Iraq, the worst foreign policy blunder in the modern history of America. Secretary Clinton and I disagree on the issue of fracking. May not seem like a sexy issue, but it is an enormously important issue. Mark my words, that in the coming years, one of the great crises that we are going to have to deal with as a nation is clean drinking water. I believe that we have to phase out fracking in order to protect our aquifers, our supplies of water. Fracking, and as it happens, as Secretary of State, push that technology on countries around the world. I believe that when we talk about why the middle class of this country has been disappearing, one of the reasons is a disastrous set of trade policies that allow corporations to shut down plants in Wisconsin, Vermont, and all over this country, and move to cheap labor countries all over the world. I have opposed every one of these disastrous trade movements. Secretary Clinton has supported virtually all of them. Now, when we talk about what goes on in America, we have got Republican governors and senators and candidates running all over this country talking about family values. And I want everybody here to know what they mean by family values. And they mean that no woman in this room, in this country, should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. Furthermore, when they talk about family values, they are talking about making it impossible for our gay brothers and sisters to get married. I disagree. by how many millionaires and billionaires it has. It is judged by how it treats the weakest and most vulnerable amongst us. That's what it means. That is why, in my view, we have a moral responsibility to protect our senior citizens. In my state and in your state, there are seniors who are on waiting lines for the Meals on Wheels program. On waiting lines to get a good, nutritious meal every day. There are seniors in this country who are cutting in half their pills because they don't have enough money to afford the medicine that they need. In America today, not only are millions of our seniors struggling economically to buy the medicine they need to heat their homes, to eat adequately, but we are also treating our children in a shameful way. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Half of our kids in public schools are on free or reduced lunch programs. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. This is not a great country when you see a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires and homeless children living in cars. We have got to get our priorities right, and our priorities must be not to cut Social Security and give tax breaks to billionaires, but to demand that the wealthy and large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes and expand Social Security. I was in Flint, Michigan last month when I saw that it was literally beyond comprehension. Children being poisoned by lead in the water for a water system that is completely inadequate. Flint, Michigan may be the worst case of a collapsing infrastructure. It is not the only case. Communities all over this country have problems with water. I say our bridges are in major disrepair. Roads need work. Our airports, our levees, our dams, our rail system needs improvement. We can create 13 million good-paying jobs by investing $1 trillion in rebuilding our infrastructure, and that is what we should do. All of you know, every person knows that real change never takes place from the top on down. It always takes place from the bottom on up. It takes place when people come together. That is true of the trade union movement. It is true of the civil rights movement. It is true of the women's movement. Do you all know? Some people have forgotten. 100 years ago, which is no time at all from a historical perspective, 100 years ago, women in America did not have the right to vote, did not have the right to get the education they wanted, did not have the right to do the jobs they wanted 100 years ago. But what happened? Women stood up, and their male allies stood up, and said that in America, women will not be second classes. Is how change always comes about. And I believe that today we are in a pivotal moment in American history. I sincerely believe that. That's why I want to president. And what that means is that all over this country, I have been all over this country, any other major country. Why is it that our middle class continues to disappear and people work 2 or 3 jobs in order to bring in enough income? Why are we the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a right? Why are we the only major country not to guarantee paid family and medical leave? Why are we punishing millions of young people because they did the right thing and got an education? Why aren't we being more aggressive in combating climate change and transforming our energy system? I am a member of the Senate Committee on the Environment. I've talked to scientists all over the world. Make no mistake about it, climate change is real, caused by human activity, already doing devastating harm. And what we have got to do as a people, this is not easy, but to stand up together, take on the fossil fuel industry, and tell them that their short-term profits are not more important than the long-term survival of our planet. These are the issues that people are now thinking about. And what people are saying is that enough is enough. Enough is enough. That we have got to create a government that is more concerned about the middle class and working families, about our seniors and our children, than just about wealthy campaign contributors. And that is essentially what this campaign is all about. And it's not easy. But let me tell you what no other candidate for president will do. That is true. And here it is an important part of that truth. And that is that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anyone else, can do it alone. We cannot do what the middle class needs just by electing a good president. What we need is a political revolution. What that means is that people all over this country are to stand up, get involved in the political process, hold their elected officials accountable, and demand that we have a government that represents all of us. That is what this campaign is about. The opposite. It's not just Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. It's you and you and you and you. It's us together. I will do my best, but you've got to do your best as well, because the powers that be, and this is the truth that other candidates won't tell you, the power of Wall Street is beyond belief. They have literally an endless supply of money. Endless supply. Corporate America, the corporate media, large campaign contributors, they have enormous power. And the only way we take them on, and the only way we protect the middle class, is when we do not allow the Donald Trumps of the world to divide us up. there is a low voter turnout, we lose. That's as simple as all that. So I would hope and ask the people of this great state, and by the way, Wisconsin in so many ways is like my own state of Vermont. I'm not even going to make a joke about cheddar cheese. I'm not going to do that. You're not great cheddar cheese, so do we are. But if people in this state, many working class, middle class people who give up on the political process, if they come back in, if young people who never participated yet in the political process come into it, if large numbers of people come out and vote and demand that we have a government that works for all of us, we will win on Tuesday, and with your help, that will happen. Thank you so much.